The storm had passed hours ago, leaving the streets of New Orleans glistening under a cold, silvery moon. Inside the Jefferson Parish Police Department's cold case unit, Lieutenant Marcus Bell sat slouched at his desk. The hum of fluorescent lights above a constant backdrop to the quiet tapping of rain on the windows. 30 years in law enforcement had taught him one thing. Every case left unsolved carried its own kind of weight, an invisible scar that never quite healed. But nothing in his career had prepared him for the email that arrived at 11:02 p.m. on a Tuesday in March 2025. The subject line read, Case 92-3014, Immediate Review Required. Bell's fingers hovered over the mouse, hesitant. Case 92-3014 had gone cold so long that even the evidence lockers bore the scent of time itself, faintly musty and forgotten. The victim's family had long stopped calling, their grief dulled into quiet acceptance. And yet, the screen before him now suggested a resurrection of everything he thought had been buried. The sender was a young forensic analyst named Layla Cruz. Her note was brief, but every word carried a weight that pressed on Bell's chest. Lieutenant, CODIS returned a match for case 92-3014. Probability is 99.95%. There's something unusual about this sample. Recommend we meet first thing tomorrow. Bell drained his cold coffee and rubbed his temples. His mind immediately drifted back to 1992, to a case that had consumed his early years on the force. A case that left ghosts behind for everyone involved. He remembered the victim's father, Henry Caldwell, a man who had aged decades in a matter of weeks, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights and unanswered questions. Henry had passed away in 2018, taking his torment with him, leaving a silence in Bell's world that had always felt heavier than grief. Pulling up the digitized case file, Bell scrolled through photographs frozen in time. A bedroom, untouched since the disappearance of 17-year-old Lillian Caldwell, told a story too familiar to him. A desk cluttered with notebooks, a half-finished letter tucked under a lamp, a window left slightly ajar, as if the house itself had been holding its breath. Bell's own reflection in the screen reminded him how much had changed. The rookie cop who once believed in absolute justice now knew that answers often came too late, and even the most definitive evidence could leave more questions than it answered. The phone rang, and Bell's pulse quickened. The display showed a name he hadn't seen in years, Captain Raymond Hayes, his mentor and former partner in the 1992 investigation. Marcus, this is about Caldwell, isn't it? Hayes's voice was low, cautious. Bell exhaled slowly. Yes, the DNA match is solid. After 33 years, we finally know who it is. There was a long pause on the other end, the kind that carried the weight of decades. Are you sure? Hayes finally asked, his voice cracking. I triple-checked it. But there's something about the profile. Layla wouldn't have flagged it if it wasn't strange. That's why I'm meeting her first thing tomorrow. March 14th, 1992, had been a cold morning in New Orleans, the kind where fog clung stubbornly to the river and muffled the sounds of the waking city. Lillian Caldwell, a bright and curious high school senior with a passion for photography, had left her small apartment on Dauphine Street, camera slung over her shoulder, notebooks packed with sketches and poems she hoped to publish someday. Neighbors remembered seeing her step into the mist, her auburn hair catching the early light, her laughter mingling with the distant church bells. She never returned. Over the years, investigators had combed through every lead, every tip, every shadow of a clue. But nothing stuck. The trail had gone cold. And yet now, 33 years later, a single email had reopened the case, sending shockwaves through Bell's world and the quiet, grief-filled lives of everyone touched by Lillian's disappearance. The following morning, Belle met with Cruz in the lab. Her expression was tight with urgency, her hands shaking slightly as she laid out the results. "Look at this," she said, pointing at the profile. "The DNA is a match, yes, but the sample also contains something else, something not human." Belle frowned. "Not human?" "Not in the way we normally see," Cruz explained. "There's a secondary genetic sequence interwoven with the human DNA. It's anomalous. Nothing I've ever encountered in 30 cases." Belle felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand. For a moment, silence filled the lab, broken only by the whir of the cold storage units. "Could it be contamination?" he asked. Cruz shook her head. "I've rerun everything. Every control is clean. Whoever or whatever left this, it's intentional. And it's been hiding in the DNA for decades." Belle leaned back, disbelief warring with the gnawing feeling in his gut. He'd solved countless crimes, but never had he felt like the universe itself had left a message buried in human biology. That night, as he returned to the empty apartment that had once belonged to Lillian, he stared at the fog-drenched streets outside. Somewhere in the shadows, the truth waited, twisted, unexpected, and just out of reach. And as he traced his fingers over the old photographs, a question burned in his mind. Had they really found Lillian's killer, or had they stumbled upon something far stranger? Because in a city like New Orleans, some mysteries never truly die. They just wait. The quiet town of Fairhaven had always seemed immune to tragedy. Nestled along the misty banks of the Lark River, it was the kind of place where everyone knew your name, where doors were rarely locked, and children played outside until the last sliver of sunlight vanished behind the oaks. It was here that 19-year-old Emma Carlisle, a local college student and aspiring historian, vanished one September evening in 1997. A disappearance that would leave an invisible scar on the town and haunt everyone who had known her. Emma was the sort of young woman small towns remembered fondly. She volunteered at the community library, tutoring children in reading on weekends. She worked part-time at her grandfather's antique bookstore, meticulously cataloging dusty tomes and letters from decades past. And she had an unshakable curiosity, spending hours poring over local archives and interviewing elderly residents to preserve the stories of Fairhaven's past. Everyone who met her described Emma as polite, responsible, and impossibly bright. A young woman whose presence made the town feel warmer, safer, and just a little more alive. The first sign that something was wrong came at 6:45 p.m. Emma had been scheduled to meet her best friend, Sarah Kendrick, at the corner of Lark Street and Oak Avenue to walk home together. When Emma failed to appear, Sarah waited and waited until frustration turned to concern. She called Emma's apartment, no answer. She called the bookstore, no answer. Even Emma's roommate, a nursing student named Carla Benson, was unable to reach her. By 8 p.m., a knot of dread had formed in Sarah's stomach, a motherly kind of fear that told her this wasn't just a case of Emma running late. By 9, Emma's grandfather, Thomas Carlisle, received the frantic call. His voice, normally warm and steady, trembled as Sarah explained that Emma had left the bookstore at 6:30, wearing her signature green jacket and carrying her leather satchel, and had not returned. Thomas tried to reassure himself with rational explanations. Perhaps Emma had stopped to help a neighbor, or maybe she had gotten lost along her usual walking route. But deep in his chest, he felt a cold dread settle in, a premonition that something was gravely wrong. The Fairhaven Police Department was modest, 12 officers covering a town of just over 3,500 residents. Missing persons were rare, and usually involved teenagers sneaking out or elderly residents wandering off. The desk sergeant, an affable man named Leonard Grayson who had watched Emma grow up, tried to calm Thomas while taking the report. "Mr. Carlyle, Emma's responsible. She's probably helping someone, or lost track of time. These college kids, they get distracted," Leonard said. But Thomas knew Emma. She wasn't the kind to get distracted. She didn't leave her routines behind. If she was going to be late, she called. If she changed plans, she left a note. Emma's life had always been orderly, deliberate, qualities that had made her both a model student and a meticulous historian. As darkness fell over Fairhaven, neighbors and friends began forming search parties. The green jacket became the focus of the hunt. Surely someone had seen it. Surely there was a logical explanation. But as the night stretched into the early hours of September 16th, and Emma remained missing, the comforting certainty of small-town life began to crack. By dawn, it was clear. Emma Carlyle had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions that would haunt the town for decades. Chief Harold Bennett, a 54-year-old Vietnam veteran with 30 years on the force, had been leading the Fairhaven Police Department for just 2 years when the call came in. His career had been spent keeping the peace in quiet towns, where the most serious crimes were bar fights and petty thefts. He had never imagined he would face a case that would test every resource, skill, and instinct he possessed. The investigative team consisted of Detective Julia Marks, a seasoned investigator known for her dogged attention to detail, and Officer Daniel Pierce, recently transferred from the state police and eager to prove himself. They pored over Emma's last known movements, retracing her steps through the bookstore, the library, and the streets she walked so frequently. Witnesses were interviewed, local security footage examined, but no one had seen her. No trace of her green jacket or leather satchel was ever recovered. Weeks turned into months, and months into years. Theories emerged, some mundane, others chilling, but every lead seemed to vanish into shadows. Yet in 2005, an unexpected clue surfaced. A letter found in the attic of an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. It was written in a careful, deliberate hand and contained fragments of Emma's distinctive handwriting. The note described an encounter with a stranger who promised information about Fairhaven's forgotten past, a lure that had evidently led her into danger. The twist was shocking. The letter suggested that Emma's disappearance might not have been random at all. Someone had known her habits, her routines, her passion for uncovering the town's hidden history, and used it to lure her away. Even now, decades later, Emma Carlyle's fate remains a mystery. Locals whisper about sightings in nearby towns, of a young woman walking alone by the river, notebook in hand. Others believe she uncovered something in Fairhaven's history that someone wanted buried. In Fairhaven, the river still glistens under the moonlight, streets remain quiet, and the oaks cast long shadows. But for those who remember Emma, some questions never leave. Some mysteries never truly die. They just wait, in the dark corners of history, for someone brave enough to seek the truth. The heavy fog had settled over the small town of Ravenwood that October evening in 1999. Streetlights flickered through the haze, casting long, wavering shadows across the cobblestone roads. It was the kind of night that made locals pull their coats tighter and hurry indoors. Yet for 21-year-old library assistant Clara Monroe, it would become the last evening anyone would see her alive. Clara was known in Ravenwood for her gentle nature and unwavering dedication. She spent her days cataloging rare books at the town's historic library and her evenings volunteering at the community theater, helping organize sets and rehearsals. She had a quiet curiosity, often lingering in the archives to read letters and diaries that revealed the town's forgotten past. Everyone who knew her described Clara as thoughtful, meticulous, and impossibly kind. a presence that made even the oldest residents feel noticed and valued. The first signs that something had gone terribly wrong came when Clara failed to meet her roommate, June Parker, at their usual Saturday coffee shop gathering. June waited, glanced at her watch, and finally called Clara's apartment. No answer. She tried the library, then the theater, growing more anxious with each failed attempt. By 8 p.m., June's worry had escalated into a paralyzing fear. Something was wrong. At 8:30, Clara's father, Robert Monroe, received the call. His calm, measured voice faltered as June explained Clara's disappearance. She had left the library around 6:45 p.m., carrying her satchel and wearing her distinctive maroon scarf, and had not returned. Robert tried to reason it away. Maybe she had lingered at a friend's house, or had become absorbed in her research. But deep in his chest, a cold dread settled, a father's instinct, telling him this was far more serious than a simple delay. The Ravenwood Police Department was small, 15 officers for a population just over 5,000. Missing persons cases were rare, usually involving teenagers sneaking out or elderly residents wandering. Sergeant Miles Whitaker, a kindly man who had known Clara since she was a child, took the report. "Mr. Monroe, Clara's careful. She's probably just off somewhere and lost track of time," he said gently. But Robert knew Clara. She never deviated from her routines. If she planned to be late, she left a note. If she changed her plans, she called. Clara's life was precise, deliberate, qualities that had made her both an excellent student and a meticulous historian. By midnight, neighbors and friends had gathered, forming search parties. They combed streets and alleyways, checked Clara's favorite parks, and called every local business. Her maroon scarf became a symbol of hope and the focus of the desperate search. But as the hours turned into the early morning and Clara remained missing, the comforting certainty of small-town life began to crumble. By dawn, it was clear. Clara Monroe had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions that would haunt Ravenwood for decades. Chief Douglas Hayes, a 50-year-old lawman with a reputation for calm under pressure, had been leading the Ravenwood Police Department for 3 years when the call came in. His experience had been with minor thefts and neighborhood disputes. He had never faced a disappearance that would test every resource, skill, and instinct he possessed. The investigative team consisted of Detective Lena Carver, a seasoned investigator known for her meticulous attention to detail, and Officer Colin Price, recently transferred and eager to prove himself. They retraced Clara's steps, canvassing the library, theater, and surrounding streets. Witnesses were interviewed. Surveillance footage was reviewed, but no one had seen her. Her satchel and scarf had vanished without a trace. Days stretched into weeks. Leads were thin, theories ranged from mundane to frightening, and the town's unease deepened. Then, in early November, an unexpected clue surfaced. A torn diary page discovered hidden in the walls of Clara's apartment building. Written in her handwriting, it described a man offering her access to Ravenwood's buried secrets, enticing her to meet him after hours. The discovery shocked the investigation. Clara's disappearance might not have been random. Someone had studied her patterns, her routines, her passion for uncovering the town's history, and used it to lure her away. As the investigation continued, local historians speculated that Clara may have stumbled upon something long concealed, an event, a crime, or a secret society operating quietly in Ravenwood's past. The thought alone was enough to chill even the most skeptical officers. Even now, decades later, Clara Monroe's fate remains unknown. Some townsfolk report fleeting sightings, a young woman walking alone along the river, a satchel slung over her shoulder, eyes scanning old buildings. Others believe she uncovered something too dangerous to share. Ravenwood remains shrouded in misty evenings, its cobblestone streets quiet, its shadows long. But for those who remember Clara, the questions linger. Some mysteries never die. They only wait in the hidden corners of history. for someone brave enough to uncover the truth. The last time anyone saw Clara Jensen was a rainy Thursday evening in October 2009. She had left her shift at the Maplewood Diner around 10:15 p.m., walking to her small apartment just 3 blocks away. But she never made it home. Her roommate, Denise, recalled Clara's last words before leaving that night. "Don't wait up. I'll be fine." At first, investigators thought this was a simple missing persons case, a young waitress who may have run off, overwhelmed by debts and a strained relationship with her father. But the deeper they dug, the stranger it became. Detectives quickly turned their attention to Ethan Rowe, Clara's ex-boyfriend, a 27-year-old musician who still lived with his brother in a cluttered attic above their family's hardware store. Ethan was described by friends as moody but harmless, though Denise painted a different picture during questioning. "He wouldn't stop calling her," she told police, "sometimes 10 times in one night. He said he couldn't handle her moving on." When detectives interviewed Ethan on October 18th, just 3 days after Clara's disappearance, they found him jittery, avoiding eye contact, his hands trembling as he lit one cigarette after another. Ethan claimed he had been rehearsing with his band the night Clara vanished. But when asked for names to confirm his alibi, his answers faltered. Investigators visited the garage where the band supposedly practiced. Its owner, a retired mechanic named Bill Crawford, remembered Ethan stopping by that evening. But according to Bill, Ethan left around 9 p.m., hours before Clara's shift ended. "I told him we weren't practicing that night," Bill explained, fiddling nervously with his glasses. "He just hung around for a while, then left." This left a crucial 2-hour window unaccounted for, perfectly overlapping with the time Clara disappeared on her short walk home. On October 22nd, police obtained a warrant to search Ethan's attic room. What they found sent a chill through the department. A stack of Clara's old photographs, many with scribbled notes in the margins. Some read like love letters, others looked more like accusations. But most disturbing of all, a set of sketches Ethan had drawn, showing a woman with her hands bound. When confronted, Ethan broke down. Between sobs, he admitted, "I followed her sometimes. I just wanted to know where she was going. But I didn't hurt Clara. I swear I didn't." For weeks, Ethan became the prime suspect. Local newspapers ran headlines branding him as the jealous ex-boyfriend who couldn't let go. His bandmates cut ties, and his family's hardware shop began receiving threatening calls. Public opinion all but convicted him before a trial could even begin. But on November 9th, a breakthrough shifted everything. Forensic testing revealed that the sketches had been drawn years earlier, long before Clara and Ethan had even met. More importantly, DNA found on Clara's missing umbrella, recovered from a storm drain 2 blocks from the diner, didn't match Ethan. Then came a shocking discovery from Clara's own belongings. Hidden in the pocket of her apron, found days later at the diner, was a folded note. In shaky handwriting, it read, "The car is back. I know it's watching me. I don't think I can keep this secret much longer." The note baffled investigators. Clara had never mentioned a car to her friends or family, but several co-workers recalled her glancing anxiously out the diner windows in the weeks before she vanished. One waitress, Megan, told detectives, "She'd go quiet sometimes and say, 'There it is again.' I thought she was joking." With Ethan cleared, the case took a darker turn. Witnesses came forward describing a dark blue sedan parked near the diner on multiple nights that October. One man remembered seeing Clara hesitate at the street corner, staring at the car, before hurrying away. The sedan, and whoever was inside, has never been identified. Clara's body was never found, and though the investigation has remained open for over a decade, no one has been charged. Ethan Rowe still lives in Maplewood, though his life has never recovered from the suspicion that once surrounded him. He insists he loved Clara and would have done anything to protect her. But in the words of Detective Laura Kent, who still revisits the case files each year, The town of Millfield had always been quiet. The kind of place where neighbors waved from porches and shopkeepers knew your favorite coffee order. But on a foggy November evening in 1992, 22-year-old Lydia Harper vanished, leaving behind nothing but questions, whispers, and a trail that seemed determined to go cold. Lydia was the type of person everyone remembered. She worked at the local museum, cataloging artifacts and maintaining the small town's rich history. She volunteered on weekends at the community center, tutoring children in reading and history. Friends described her as intelligent, thoughtful, and endlessly patient. Someone whose laughter could fill a room and whose curiosity knew no bounds. Her disappearance would shatter Millfield's sense of safety, replacing it with an unshakable unease that lingered for decades. The last confirmed sighting was at 9:40 p.m. on November 14th. Lydia had left the museum after a late shift, carrying her satchel and wearing a green wool coat. She was supposed to meet her roommate, Tessa Collins, at a nearby diner for coffee before heading home. Tessa waited and waited until she called Lydia's apartment. No answer. She called the museum. No one had seen her leave. Panic set in. By midnight, Lydia Harper had become more than a missing person. She had become a mystery. The Millfield Police Department was small, 10 officers covering a population of 4,200. Missing persons were rare, and most involved teenagers who ran away, or elderly residents who wandered. Sergeant Paul Redding, a veteran of the force who had known Lydia since she was a child, took the report. "Don't worry, Mr. Harper," he said gently to Lydia's father, Harold. "She's responsible. Maybe she lost track of time, or stopped to help someone. These things happen." Harold Harper, however, knew his daughter. "She wouldn't just disappear," he whispered. "She leaves notes. She calls if she's late. Something's wrong." Detectives focused on Marcus Doyle, a local carpenter, and Lydia's brief ex-boyfriend. Marcus lived on the outskirts of Millfield, in a small, cluttered cabin. Friends described him as introverted, but harmless. Yet Tessa painted a darker picture. He called her constantly, even when she asked him not to. Sometimes late at night, 10 or 15 calls in a row. When police questioned Marcus on November 18th, he appeared nervous, shifting in his seat, hands trembling. He claimed he had been working on a job for a client during the evening Lydia disappeared. But when asked for verification, his story faltered. Investigators visited the client's workshop. The owner, an elderly man named Frank Ellis, recalled seeing Marcus that afternoon, but sent him home around 8 p.m. That left a critical window, overlapping with Lydia's last known movements. On November 23rd, police obtained a warrant for Marcus's cabin. What they discovered made the investigation even murkier. A stack of Lydia's old letters, some lovingly annotated, others marked with red ink in ways that seemed obsessive. Among the papers were sketches of a young woman walking alone, sometimes with a shadowy figure behind her. Confronted with the evidence, Marcus broke down. "I just wanted to know she was safe. I didn't hurt her," he sobbed. "I loved her, I swear." For 3 weeks, Marcus became the focal point of public suspicion. Newspapers ran sensational headlines. The local community turned against him, and his business received threatening calls. But on December 5th, forensic testing revealed the sketches were years old, drawn long before Marcus had met Lydia. Even more startling, a diary recovered from Lydia's apartment contained entries about a dark, unmarked van that seemed to follow her home from work. Lydia had written, "It's been waiting outside again. I don't know how long it's been watching me." Witnesses later confirmed seeing a blue van parked near the museum multiple nights before Lydia disappeared. The vehicle and its driver were never identified. With Marcus cleared, the case took on a chilling new dimension. Whoever had been watching Lydia remained unknown. Her apartment had been ransacked, yet nothing was stolen, suggesting the motive was far more sinister than simple robbery. Decades later, Millfield still whispers about Lydia Harper. Some claim to have seen her walking near the old museum on foggy evenings. Others believe she uncovered something someone wanted hidden forever. The streets of Millfield remain quiet. The fog still rolls in from the river. But for those who remember Lydia, the questions never leave. Some mysteries don't end with a solved case. They linger in the shadows, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover the truth. The small town of Ashford had always prided itself on its quiet streets and friendly faces. But on a chilly November evening in 2003, 19-year-old Marissa Klein vanished, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and a sense of unease that would haunt the town for years. Marissa was known for her warmth and curiosity. She worked at the Ashford Public Library, spending her days among books and her evenings volunteering at a local youth center. Friends described her as diligent, compassionate, and endlessly curious. Someone who could make anyone feel seen. Her disappearance struck the town like a thunderclap, shattering the illusion of safety in Ashford. The last confirmed sighting was at 8:30 p.m. on November 12th. Marissa had left the library after closing, carrying her backpack and wearing a navy jacket. She was supposed to meet her older brother, Nathan, at a nearby cafe before heading home. Nathan waited and waited before calling her apartment. No answer. He called the library. No one had seen her leave. By midnight, Marissa Klein was more than missing. She had become a mystery. The Ashford Police Department was modest. 12 officers covering a population just under 5,000. Missing persons were rare, usually involving teenagers or elderly residents wandering off. Sergeant Helen Torres, a veteran officer who had known Marissa since childhood, took the report. "She's responsible, Mr. Klein," she told Marissa's father gently. "Maybe she got held up or went somewhere unexpectedly. These things happen." But Paul Klein, Marissa's father, knew his daughter. "She wouldn't just vanish," he said quietly. "She leaves notes. She calls if she's late, something's wrong." Detectives soon focused on Liam Grayson, Marissa's ex-boyfriend. Liam lived in a small cabin on the edge of town, cluttered with woodworking projects and unfinished furniture. Friends described him as quiet, but harmless. Yet Marissa's roommate, Zoe, told a different story. He kept calling her, sometimes late at night, over and over. She said she didn't want to talk, but he didn't listen. When police interviewed Liam on November 15th, he appeared nervous, fidgeting in his chair. He claimed he had been working in his workshop that evening, finishing a client's project. But when asked to provide a timeline or witnesses, his story began to unravel. Investigators visited the client, an elderly man named Harold Jenkins, who confirmed Liam had been there, but only until 7 p.m., leaving a critical window that overlapped with Marissa's disappearance. On November 20th, police obtained a warrant for Liam's cabin. Inside, they found a collection of Marissa's old notes and sketches. Some seemed innocuous, others obsessively detailed. Among the items were sketches of a young woman walking alone, sometimes with a shadowy figure lurking nearby. Confronted with the evidence, Liam broke down. I just wanted to know she was safe," he sobbed. "I didn't hurt her. I loved her. I swear." For 3 weeks, Liam became the focus of public suspicion. Headlines labeled him obsessive and dangerous. His friends distanced themselves, his workshop received threatening calls, and the town seemed to turn against him. Then, on December 3rd, forensic analysis revealed a startling truth. The sketches were years old, long before Liam had ever met Marissa. Even more concerning, a diary recovered from Marissa's backpack contained entries describing a dark, unmarked sedan that had been seen outside the library several nights in the week before her disappearance. One entry read, "It's outside again, watching me. I don't know who it is." Several witnesses later confirmed seeing a blue sedan parked near the library in those nights. The driver and the motive remained unknown. With Liam cleared, the case took on a chilling new dimension. Whoever had been observing Marissa remained at large. Her apartment had been disturbed, yet nothing was taken, suggesting something far more sinister than theft. Decades later, Ashford still whispers about Marissa Klein. Some claim to see a young woman walking near the library on foggy evenings. Others believe she uncovered something. Someone wanted hidden forever. The streets of Ashford remain quiet. The fog rolls in from the river. But for those who remember Marissa, the questions never leave. Some mysteries do not end with answers. They linger in the shadows, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover the truth. The small town of Halleridge had always seemed untouched by the chaos of the world, a place where neighbors exchanged greetings on sunlit porches, and children played until dusk without fear. But on a cold December night in 2005, 18-year-old Emily Carter disappeared from the town's central plaza, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and a chilling sense of dread. Emily was the kind of young woman everyone remembered. She worked at the local bookstore, cataloging rare editions and helping organize literary events. On weekends, she volunteered at the town's historical society, guiding tourists and sharing her passion for Halleridge's past. Friends described her as kind, inquisitive, and endlessly patient. Someone whose curiosity often led her down paths no one else dared to explore. Her disappearance would shatter the town's calm, replacing it with a tension that lingered for years. The last confirmed sighting was at 10:15 p.m. on December 12th. Emily had left the bookstore after closing, carrying her tote bag and wearing a burgundy coat. She planned to meet her roommate, Sarah Whitman, for a brief walk home together. Sarah waited and waited until she called Emily's apartment. No answer. She called the bookstore. No one had seen Emily leave. By midnight, Emily Carter was no longer just missing. She had become a mystery. The Halleridge Police Department was small, 12 officers covering a population of just over 5,000. Missing persons were rare, and most involved teenagers sneaking away or elderly residents wandering. Sergeant Daniel Reyes, a seasoned officer who had known Emily since childhood, took the report. "Don't worry, Mr. Carter," he said gently to Emily's father. "She's responsible. Perhaps she lingered somewhere or got held up. These things happen." But David Carter, Emily's father, knew his daughter. "She wouldn't just vanish," he whispered. "She leaves notes. She calls if she's late. Something's wrong." Detectives soon focused on Ryan Hall, Emily's former boyfriend. Ryan lived in a modest cabin at the edge of town, cluttered with woodworking tools and half-finished furniture. Friends described him as quiet, even shy. But Emily's roommate, Sarah, offered a more troubling perspective. He called her constantly, even late at night. Emily would tell him to stop, but he wouldn't listen. When police questioned Ryan on December 15th, he appeared restless, fidgeting in his chair. He claimed he had been working on a client's project that evening. When asked for verification, his story wavered. Investigators visited the client, an elderly man named George Miller, who confirmed Ryan had been at his workshop, but only until 9 p.m., leaving a crucial window overlapping with Emily's last known movements. On December 20th, officers obtained a warrant for Ryan's cabin. Inside, they discovered a collection of Emily's old notes and sketches. Some were innocent, others obsessively detailed. Among the items were drawings of a young woman walking alone, sometimes followed by a shadowy figure. Confronted with the evidence, Ryan broke down. I just wanted to know she was safe," he sobbed. "I didn't hurt her. I loved her, I swear." For weeks, Ryan became the center of public suspicion. Headlines painted him as obsessive and dangerous. Friends distanced themselves, his workshop received threatening calls, and the town turned against him. Then, on January 5th, forensic testing revealed a startling truth. The sketches were years old, created long before Ryan had met Emily. More alarming, a diary recovered from Emily's backpack contained entries describing a dark, unmarked van that had been parked outside the bookstore for several nights leading up to her disappearance. One entry read, "It's there again. I don't know who it is. I can feel it watching." Several witnesses later confirmed seeing a blue van parked near the bookstore in the evenings before Emily vanished. The driver and their intentions remain unknown. With Ryan cleared, the case took on a darker, more sinister dimension. Whoever had been observing Emily remained free. Her apartment had been disturbed, yet nothing was stolen, hinting that the motive was far more dangerous than theft. Decades later, Halleridge still whispers about Emily Carter. Some claim to see a young woman walking near the bookstore on foggy nights. Others believe she uncovered something someone wanted hidden forever. The streets of Halleridge remain quiet. The mist rolls in from the river. But for those who remember Emily, the questions never leave. Some mysteries do not end with resolution. They linger in the shadows, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover the truth. The vanishing of Eliza Kane. A cold case that defied time. The night Eliza Kane disappeared was quiet. Almost too quiet. A full moon hung over the sleepy town of Ashford, its light casting long shadows across the deserted streets. Eliza, a young archivist with a fascination for the town's hidden histories, had left her apartment just before midnight, telling no one where she was going. By morning, she was gone. For 32 years, her name lingered in whispers, a ghost story that everyone knew, but no one could explain. And then, in 2025, a single discovery threatened to rewrite everything people thought they knew about her disappearance. Detective Lucas Vance had spent nearly a decade studying unsolved cases across Ashford, but Eliza's file had always been one that haunted him. Her disappearance wasn't random. Her purse, left on the steps of her apartment door, locked from the inside, and her meticulously kept journal, vanished without a trace. Her friends remembered her last evening vividly. She seemed anxious, recalled her colleague Marianne Holt in a recorded interview. Like she was waiting for something. But for what? We'll never know. Vance visited the small-town library, where Eliza had worked. Old security footage, grainy and degraded, showed her entering the archives late one night, her expression tense, glancing over her shoulder. "I remember thinking she looked like she was on the verge of discovering something big," librarian Thomas Green said. "She wouldn't tell anyone what it was, not even me." Reenactments show Eliza moving through the dim stacks of books, a soft rustle of papers, a shadow moving just beyond the camera's angle. Something was watching her. For decades, leads went cold. The case became another file in the Ashford police archives,